From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, hundreds of Boko Haram members reportedly flee northeast Nigeria into the Republic of Niger to escape airstrikes and clearance operations by the military, as well as flooding. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu raises fresh concerns that insecurity is a major threat to the 2023 elections, says polls cannot be better than the environment in which they are conducted. Federal government seeks accelerated hearing of its suit against striking university lecturers in a matter adjourned till next Monday. President Muhammadu Buhari meets university pro-chancellors in Abuja.
And on business news tonight, World Bank warns that interest rate hikes by central banks around the world could trigger a global recession next year.
On sports news tonight, Ecuador will play at the 2022 World Cup after FIFA dismissed an appeal from Chile over Byron Castillo, whom they claimed was ineligible to play during the qualifiers.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Mr. Issa Pantami, reveals that his life has been under threat because of the same NIN linkage policy, says criminals are against its implementation.
And in international news from London, Ukraine says that hundreds of graves have been found outside Izum, days after the town was retaken from Russian forces.
Describe it as cherry news, and you may not be wrong, as the tide appears to have turned against terrorist groups Boko Haram and ISWAP in the northeast of the country. They now seem to have been caught on their back foot, as hundreds of them are reported to have fled the Sambisa forest area in Borno State to escape the air bombardments and ground operations by the military. Their condition is said to have been compounded by floods from torrential rains, which is forcing them to seek shelter on the Republic of Niger's side of the Lake Chad.
Boko Haram insurgents have terrorized northeastern Nigeria for 13 years now, sometimes extending their attacks to other parts of the country. These attacks have led to over 2 million people fleeing their homes and over 40,000 people killed, while an unknown number remain in Boko Haram captivity as kidnapped victims. Although the jihadists have recently taken their attacks beyond the northeast, extending to the northwest and north central, their bold challenge to the seat of power with the attacks on the Kuje Correctional Center as well as the Presidential Guards Brigade seems to have drawn the fire of the Nigerian military, turning the tide against the insurgents. Reports say hundreds of them are now on the run as they try to evade airstrikes and an onslaught from Mother Nature, with the rainy season bringing torrential rainfall that is flooding their camps in Sambisa Forest, their notorious hideout.
This is not something that anyone could have predicted, but nature has now given us an opportunity. Nature has put pressure on a group that has been ravaging Nigeria for more than 10 years. And in such a circumstance, they are in severe disarray.
According to the AFP, the terrorists were seen traveling in a convoy of over 50 trucks through areas including Mafa Forest and between Gajaram and Gasarawa to reach the borders with Niger Republic and the Niger axis of the Lake Chad Basin, where they are said to have camps. Analysts say this may provide the military an opportunity to rout these enemies of state.
They are currently very weak, so it's an opportunity for us to continue with the current momentum. Let's remember that in the last few weeks, we've seen an intensity in terms of the military operations that have been going on all over the country. Now, consistently, in addition to the military onslaught, this natural phenomenon, the flooding, and disease too, to an extent. This fratricidal conflict between them is also leading to a depletion of the members of the two groups. So really, we have a very good opportunity at our hands at the moment.
Indeed, if the security forces of both Nigeria and Niger Republic joined by the multinational joint task force, the noose may be tightened on the terrorists as they seem now to be caught between a rock and a hard place.
In other security stories, particularly as they affect elections, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, is urging men and officers of the Army to adhere strictly to the rules of engagement and code of conduct during the 2023 electioneering period. He says the Nigerian Army remains loyal to the Constitution of Nigeria, giving the assurance that the state of security in the country will continue to improve in the days ahead. He was speaking at the closing of the 2022 Chief of Army Staff Third Quarter Conference held at the Army Headquarters Command Officers Mess in Asokoro, Abuja.
I want to enjoin all formation and unit commanders on the need to be vigilant, aware of all situations through constant monitoring and ensuring proactive solutions to situations. Commanders are equally reminded on the need to employ stringent measures to maintain efficient security of arms and ammunition. Additionally, the directive on the reviewed Nigerian Army Rules of Engagement and Code of Conduct for Operation Safe Conduct in respect of our general elections should be adhered to strictly by all during the electioneering period. Thus, commanders must ensure that subordinates are educated on the guidelines provided in the document. Commanders must also ensure the professional conduct of troops and resist any distraction and attempt by misguided element to disrepute the image of the Nigerian Army. All must remain professional and apolitical in the conduct all through operations of conduct. There is no doubt that with our efforts in collaboration with sister services and other security agencies, the state of security in the country will continue to improve in the days ahead. I therefore urge all commanders to remain committed, more so that the 2023 electioneering will soon commence.
Meanwhile, an election cannot be better than the environment in which it is conducted. This is according to the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu. Professor Yakubu believes that the quality of Nigeria's infrastructure, political structure and security situation will play a major role in the conduct of the forthcoming general elections. He stated this during an interactive session with the Nigerian Guild of Editors in Lagos.
The 2023 general election may well be defined by two conditions. The first one is the security situation in the country. We have to deploy to all nooks and crannies of the country. We have been speaking with the security agencies who will continue to speak to them. But it is their responsibility to secure the environment for the Commission to deploy for elections. So we are keeping our eyes on the security situation in the country. Unlike the last two elections, 2015 and 2019, when insecurity was largely confined to a particular zone, the northeast, and even so to three states, Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. This time around, it is more widespread. But as we jokingly say in the Commission, sometimes the troublemakers appear to be Democrats because they are quiet on election day. Probably they have also gone to vote. Or probably they have some leaning somewhere and they are told that please allow this process to go. So the security situation is going to be another a big challenge. The other one, as I said earlier, is the social media. The third one is the attitude of the politicians. You can't have a flourishing democracy without Democrats. Democracy can flourish without Democrats. So sometimes I wonder, I'm amazed, when someone goes into an election and immediately he or she loses, he then says, oh, my mandate has been stolen. But power in a democracy belongs to the people. You don't come with it from your house. So if you don't get it, it must have been stolen. So the attitude of the political class is a big challenge.
Still ahead of the elections in Adamawa State, the All Progressives Congress has restated its commitments to ensuring victory for all its candidates in the forthcoming general elections under the leadership of the acting chairman of the party, Mr. Samalia Tadawus. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the publicity secretary, Mr. Mohammed Abdullahi, says the party remains a united family despite the resignation of Mr. Ibrahim Bilal as the chairman of the party in the state.
Following the events of 5th September 2022, in respect of the party leadership and the various meetings and consultations that followed at the zonal and national levels of the party, the State Working Committee met and deliberated on the explanations offered by the State Chairman Alhaji Ibrahim Bilal. The State Working Committee has substantially accepted his explanation, which is hinged on expediency of time and the need to meet deadlines. However, Alhaji Ibrahim Bilal has resigned from his position as the state chairman of the party on personal grounds effective from 13th September 2022. Meanwhile, Alhaji Ibrahim Bilal remains a loyal, dedicated, and committed stakeholder of the party and will take up a national assignment that is in the best interest of the party and our state. The State Working Committee appreciates the various roles played by the former chairman and all our stakeholders in building and promoting the party in the state.
Into legal matters, a federal high court sitting in Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, has nullified the People's Democratic Party governorship primary that produced Daudu Lawal as the state's governorship candidate of the party ahead of the 2023 general election. In a judgment delivered by Justice Aminu Bapa, the court granted all the prayers by the plaintiff to nullify the primary, ordering fresh primary election in line with the constitution of the PDP. Ibrahim Shehu Gusau and two other PDP governorship aspirants sought the nullification of the primary election held on May the 25th over alleged irregularities and non-compliance with the constitution of the PDP. The defendants were former PDP governorship candidates Lawal, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the chairman of Zamfara PDP Governorship Primary Election Committee, Adamu Maina Waziri, and the chairman of Zamfara State's PDP, retired Colonel Bala Mande. In part two, after the break, the president meets with university pro-chancellors and other senior staff universities in Abuja as part of steps towards ending the industrial action by ASU. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channel Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Hundreds of Boko Haram members reportedly flee northeast Nigeria into Republic of Niger to escape airstrikes and clearance operations by the military, as well as flooding. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu raises fresh concerns on insecurity as major threat to 2023 elections, says polls cannot be better than the environment in which they are conducted. Federal government seeks accelerated hearing of its suit against striking university lecturers as matter is adjourned till next Monday. President Muhammadu Buhari meets university pro-chancellors in Abuja. And Ukraine says hundreds of graves have been found outside Izium days after the town was retaken from Russia. And now to the lingering strike by university lecturers. The National Industrial Court has adjourned till September 19th. The suit filed by the federal government challenging the action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. At the resumed sitting, counsel to the federal government, James Igwe, asked the court to give the suit an accelerated hearing due to the urgency of the matter to enable students return to school. Counsel to the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Mr. Femi Falana, says the union is meeting with stakeholders to ensure that the matter is resolved.
Members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, are here at the National Industrial Court of Nigeria to face the suits filed against them by the federal government, challenging their industrial action, which they embarked upon about 7 months ago. At the day's proceedings, counsel to the federal government, Mr. James Igwe, tells the judge that since the matter was already in court, it will be proper for the strike to be called off pending the determination of the suit. Counsel to ASU, Femi Falana, however, reminds the court that the case was slated for Friday, September 16, for further mention and not for hearing. He confirms receipt of the federal government's motion for interlocutory injunction. Mr. Falana adds that ASU is currently meeting with stakeholders to ensure that the lingering crisis is resolved, just as he appeals to the federal government to cooperate with them to resolve the issue. In his ruling, Justice Polycarp Hammond agreed with the counsel to ASU that the case was adjourned for further mention and not hearing. He notes that the federal government's application was due for hearing. He also noted that the applications filed by the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SARAP, seeking to be joined, is not ripe for hearing.
I am certainly sure that the federal government, in their magnanimity, wanted to exhaust the conciliatory processes. The Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment duly apprehended the strike and set up the necessary mechanisms towards the resolution, and the government was very, very serious about it. And then while those conciliatory processes were on, ASU did the rollover strike and then had the indefinite strike. So what the Minister of Labour and Employment has done to make this referral is in the best interest. Yeah, I'm certainly sure he probably would have gone to court earlier, but he wanted to ensure there is conciliation.
Our appeal should go to the government to learn to respect agreements so that these strikes will not be necessary, in the interest of the nation and in the interest of our children. And notwithstanding the fact that the matter is in court, the government must be prepared to end this strike. Only the government can do so today.
The National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, also brought an application asking that the strike be called off as soon as possible.
The students are already short end of the stick. They are the victim in the whole of the case. So that's why we brought an application that in all they are doing, the elephants, in all ASU is doing, in all the federal government is doing, they should consider the interest of the students and call off the strike.
The case was subsequently adjourned to September 19, 2022 for hearing of the interlocutory application of the federal government.
Meanwhile, the president is taking steps towards ending the protracted strike by university lecturers and has met with the chairman and select members of pro-chancellors of federal universities at the State House today. President Muhammadu Buhari promised to engage in further consultations with relevant stakeholders on the matter. According to a statement by the Presidential Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, the pro-chancellors were led to the meeting by Professor Nimi Briggs, who explained that they met with the president in 3 capacities: as president and commander-in-chief, as father of the nation, and as visitor to the federal universities. Professor Briggs, who headed a presidential committee, is said to have expressed optimism that the future of university system in the country is good, citing the listing of the University of Ibadan among the first 1,000 universities in the world, while commending the federal government for concessions already made to the striking lecturers, including the offer to raise salaries by 23.5% across board and 35% for professors. He called for further raise in the salary in view of the economic situation in the country. The pro-chancellors also asked for a reconsideration of the no-work, no-pay stance of government, promising that lecturers would make up for lost time as soon as schools are reopened. And to other stories now, governors of the northeast states are optimistic that the lingering challenges in the region will be surmounted. The governors expressed this optimism at the opening of the 7th meeting of their forum in Gombe today, but they also said they are concerned about the growing spate of kidnappings and banditry in the region. The chairman of the Northeast Governors Forum, Babagana Zulum, noted that there is need for urgent action to address the challenge. Other areas of worry for the governors are the huge infrastructure deficit in the region, youth restiveness, climate change, poverty, among others. Shortly after the opening, the governors went into a closed-door session to deliberate on some of the issues raised.
As we are now set to deliberate on matters of common interest and shared responsibilities, there is compelling need for us to take a more critical look at the emerging issue of kidnapping, which has become a crime of choice for criminals and is becoming rampant and widespread. It is, therefore, a matter of strategic necessity to essentialize the issue of kidnapping and come up with implementable measures to deal with this element of criminality before it is too late. It is in this respect we will obviously be guided by our respective attorney generals who will initiate the appropriate legal framework to deal with the problem.
Ahead of the resumption of plenary, President of Senate Ahmed Lawan has laid out some of the issues that the National Assembly would be addressing. Senator Lawan says the lawmakers will hasten the confirmation of the acting Chief Justice of the Federation, as well as ensuring that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, lacks nothing as it prepares for the 2023 general elections. He was speaking after inspecting the ongoing renovation work at the National Assembly complex, affirming that the 2023 budget will be presented by the President in the first week of October.
We have the nomination or confirmation of the Chief Justice of Nigeria waiting already. Recall that the President sent the request, but that was a day before the Senate went on its annual summer recess. And therefore, this is going to be one of the first things we need to do to ensure that the acting capacity does not go beyond the required 3 months. But we also know that we are going to resume, Mr. President, for the presentation of the 2023 appropriation or budget estimates. And we expect that the President will be doing that in the first week of October. We also have so many other issues of ensuring that the 2023 general elections at the end, the kind of elections that everybody will say, well, I have won fairly and squarely, or I've lost fairly. So we want to ensure that there is a very credible elections that will be of integrity, and we will support INEC to the fullest to ensure that the 2023 general elections hold in such a manner that INEC does not lack anything, that Nigerians are able to exercise their franchise, and at the end of the day, we'll have a new set of leaders to continue to lead Nigeria.
We're now off to our Abuja studios for more stories. Magbe, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Millicent. Well, we begin with some disturbing revelation from the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Mr. Issa Pantami, who says his life has been under threat because of the federal government's policy directing all citizens to link their mobile phone SIM cards to the national identification number. He made the disclosure during the celebration of the 2022 National Identity Day held at the International Conference Center here in Abuja. Also speaking at the event, the Director General of the National Identity Management Agency says 90 million people out of the over 200 million population of Nigeria have so far linked their SIM cards to the national identification numbers. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
Nigeria's different cultural attires are on display as stakeholders gather to mark the 2022 National Identity Day, which is the fourth in the series.
That hits the NIMC back end. Yes.
The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Mr. Issa Pantami, uses the occasion to give an update on the National Identity Database of the federal government. He also discloses that his life has been threatened because of the policy by the federal government directing all citizens to link their mobile phone SIM cards to their national identification number.
When we commenced the process, many people turned against us. In fact, a campaign of calumny was sponsored against my personality in 2021. Why? Because criminals joined hands together to ensure that this process failed. I went to His Excellency, Mr. President, to clarify. He said, no need for clarification, go and do your work. I'm solidly behind you. And I came back and I proceeded with the process. Today, many lines have been blocked. People saying that nobody will do, it has been done. My life was threatened because of the introduction of NIN and SIM registration on BBC radio and many more, and I resisted, believing that nobody in this world controls my days in this world, only Almighty does.
Despite the threats, about 90 million Nigerians have been enrolled in the National Identity Database, according to the National Identity Management Commission.
We are almost 90 million enrollment. And the issue before is that people were asking that they don't have NIN. So how can they link their SIM? And we have made a lot of provision for access, that we have more than 15,000 centers. We have more than almost 30,000 equipment nationwide. And we also have a mobile enrollment that can go to the people to enroll them.
The Commission hopes to use the 2022 National Identity Day to seek the support of traditional rulers in mobilizing their subjects towards ensuring that they get enrolled into the national database. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, the World Bank warns that interest rate hikes by central banks around the world could trigger a global recession in 2023. That's on Business News. Do join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. To the aviation sector now, where efforts towards improving research and development for highly skilled manpower to service the industry, not only in Nigeria but across Africa, appears to be on the upswing. This comes as the minister, Mr. Hadi Sirika, says the African Aviation Aerospace University will begin operations later this month with a campus near the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport here in Abuja. He says provisional approval for the takeoff of the institution has been granted by the National Universities Commission. Meanwhile, it's good news for Azman Air, as the Nigerian National Aviation Authority says it has renewed its air transport license consequent upon the fulfillment of all outstanding requirements. Now, this comes barely 24 hours after the regulatory authority said Azman was yet to fulfill all requirements, including signing of an MOU over its outstanding debts. The airline was said to have failed the audit of its air operator certificate, that's its AOC, an aviation safety instrument that authorizes an airline operator to carry out specified commercial air transport operations. The NCAA said the renewal of the air transport license now enables the airline to resume flight operations. In other news, as if to buttress the earlier complaints of governors in the Northeast about a deficit of infrastructure in the region, 9 out of the 17 local government areas of Yobe State have been cut off from Damaturu, the state capital, owing to heavy rainfall that has washed away some bridges. Residents of all the affected councils now have to resort to alternative routes in Jigawa and Bauchi states before reaching the state capital, or use a canoe to cross to the other side.
Over the years, erosion has been a major environmental threat to many Nigerian communities, compelling the federal government to periodically allocate ecological funds to fight the adverse weather condition. Pompomari, Susuma and Kukareta are communities that have been severely impacted by erosion, with farmlands, houses and access roads linking them destroyed.
Since the dredging of this security trench behind the community. Before the dredging of the security trench, the water that falls used to go down there. But now, due to this dredging, the water used to come down to Sumsuma before it find out its way.
To ameliorate these problems that have almost become an annual phenomenon, a civil society organization named Site of Hope and Peace Advancement Initiative is empowering internally displaced women to plant 200 economic trees in Kukareta community.
It's for women in order to reduce their trauma situation, because most of them here are at the host community as IDPs, and they have went through series of trauma and stressful conditions because of the Boko Haram crisis that occurred before now.
As a human rights commission, the planting of tree here was actually selected, and is part of their right in Section 2, the right to welfare, because if the trees are planted, it tends to provide a lot of protection for them, one, in terms of preventing their house from environmental hazard, and then at the same time providing them with shade.
Kukareta community, located 23 kilometers away from Damaturu, the state capital, had accommodated over 17,000 internally displaced persons between 2014 and 2017 during the peak of the Boko Haram insurgency.
Meanwhile, motorists in Niger State are lamenting the slow pace of work on the Mina-Bida road, which situation is worsened by the recent collapse of a portion of the road. The motorists are asking the Niger State government to come to their rescue and ensure the completion of the road.
This is the Mina-Bida road in Niger State, north-central Nigeria. The road links Kwara State to Niger State and subsequently the southwestern part of the country. The road is in a deplorable state and motorists are having a difficult time on the road.
I drive Lagos here to Ilorin, and the difficulty we are facing in this place is very bad. Like seriously, it's very bad. Being a Nigerian, we face a lot, and all these things are something we are campaigning for. You just campaign after 4 years, you abandon it.
Please, I need the airport, government to airports for this road, with the suffer for this road. We've been there first time they come, the one bridge break. We suffer, it reached about 4 hours there before we pass that place.
A recent collapse of a portion near Kakapagi village on 82 kilometers is not making the situation any better. The culvert collapsed after rainfall. Repair work on the road has started already, but the pace is not encouraging.
The diesel price from 280 went to 810 naira. One. That's one. Number two, unavailability. Even with your money, you can't get it, because once you pay in for diesel, within 3 days, there's a new price fluctuation. Number three, we get diesel tankers on this site and they are heavily adulterated with petrol, and we have to return them. I have returned. So these are the major problems that the project manager and the management here is facing on this project, but we hope since last 3 weeks things have been better.
The contractor was given 15 months to complete the project, and the state government has released 11.2 billion naira for the project, hoping that they are able to deliver the project on time.
We are concerned that with the pace of work, this is something really serious has to be done. As we will no longer receive funds, they will no longer receive funds.
We have been doing some intervention activities over the last couple of days around the collapsed bridge, almost twice. The rainy season is a critical factor that affected the performance of that road, but we are there.
The state government is promising to monitor the contractors to ensure that the March 2023 deadline is adhered to by the contractor.
And on that note of optimism, it's back now to you, Millicent.
Indeed. Many thanks, Markwe. And staying with infrastructure development, it was a bit of a remarkable moment for Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State today, as residents of some communities in Emohua local government area rolled out the drums to celebrate him for providing them with a tarred road for the first time in their history. The people are said to have lived for hundreds of years, long before the creation of Rivers State, without an access road.
As the clock ticks for his exit from office, Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State has continued to consolidate on his infrastructure development program. But this time, Emoa, a community just outside of Port Harcourt, the state capital, will enjoy a road project that lies along the Bayelsa axis of the east-west road. Governor Wike also uses this opportunity to inspect the ongoing construction of a road in Mbutanwo community. He then proceeds to room Odogo 1 and 2, where he is heartily welcomed by the people for giving them the first ever tarred road that stretches over 13 kilometers. They're not the only people excited about the project. The council chairman, Dr. Chidi Lloyd, is equally grateful that Governor Wike approved his request.
When I returned to the party on the 24th of August 2020, this was one of the appeals I made to the governor. And in less than no time, he visited this community, albeit that he stopped on the east-west road. And without knowing, this is the first time he's come to this community. He awarded this job. Not just awarding the job is already completed.
The governor appreciates God for the opportunity to serve.
I will tell you the truth. After the day I flagged up this road, I've never taken pains to really come down here. So I feel so highly elated, feel so happy. There are communities like this is a section of the River State. Nobody has bothered to even think about whether they exist. But with the road we have done, and I can tell you, emotionally I'm touched. I feel so touched. I can't thank God enough for giving me the opportunity to the person who today.
These projects and others being handled by the Wike administration are earmarked for completion and commissioning before the handover date of May the 29th, 2023.
Outside our shores, as international students return to schools all over the world, Nigerian scholars in the diaspora have been speaking about the challenges some of them face getting funding and visas to continue their studies. One of them is Dr. Adeniji, a mathematician and lecturer at Wane University of Technology in South Africa. Dr. Adeniji successfully intervened in the visa application of 4 scholars who won the prestigious DAD in-region scholarship. They would have lost their offers and placements following delays associated with the bureaucracy of the visa application process.
If our parents are rich, we don't need scholarship. And if they are not rich, then we need scholarship. and they can't get a scholarship, and due to bottleneck visa procedures, lose it. That got me angry. So, and one of them just reached out to me and said, okay, doc, this is what is happening. So I asked her, how far about your visa application? And she was like, nothing. So they put on the visa February. And dad asked them to be in the country by July 1st, otherwise they lose the, hey. And I was like, no. So by June 14, if I'm not mistaken, I took the initiative, first time, to write the minister. That's Dr. Aaron,
Lady.
Yes, exactly. And so I sent him an email, copied his personnel and all of that. And they kept on going back and forth, and they keep asking me, doc, should we give up? Hey, a portion of my heart will like, yes, I don't know. And a portion will be like, okay, as far as July 1st is not here, let's shoot and see how far we can go. So that June 28th, I took the last bit and I sent an email. I was speaking with their supervisors and that, and then they got a call. Like, there's somebody in South Africa, a mathematician, who sent an email to the minister, and it should be please treated as urgent. I was like, ooh, VIP, treated as urgent. And I think 2 days after, they all got their visa and came into the Republic to study. Now, I only know one out of them, which is Victoria Okewale. But China said that there are 3, making 4. Hey, for me, I was like, hey, destiny must not go to waste. So that was the driving force, the propeller, that would be like, I will do everything within my capacity to see that these guys get there. Now, 3 of them are mathematicians, 1 of them is a veterinary doctor. So for you to know that it's not just to math people alone, but it's to, as long as you have this thing in your heart to pursue your career with everything you've got, I'll give my backing.
To catch the full interview with Dr. Adejimi Adeniji, do watch Diaspora Network on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Business News is next. Here's Teniola Oyetayo.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Millicent. Welcome to Business News. Interest rate hikes by central banks around the world could trigger a global recession in 2023, and that's according to the World Bank's latest study. The warning from the International Finance Institution comes ahead of upcoming monetary policy meetings by the U.S. Federal Reserve and Bank of England, which are expected to increase key interest rates next week. In its latest report, the World Bank said the global economy is in its steepest slowdown following a post-recession recovery since 1970, while its study found that the world's 3 largest economies, US, China and EU, have been slowing sharply. Well, back home, let's check in on the stock market now. Ini John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, it's a wrap for the weekend. Yes, you guessed right. The bear won all through this week. Well, the oil share index took a fall again today for the 5th time this week. And today it fell by 0.13%. And there we see that, the oil share index is looking so far away from the 50,000, 49,475.42. And the market cap obviously will not be looking any better. 26.686 trillion naira. We're not getting close to that 27 that we see. Activity chart, very red today. All red, in fact. Volume 107, lower than yesterday. Value gone back to the 1.15 billion naira. And of course, the deals also took a fall. But some people still managed to make it to the gainers list. Leading that is the NEM Insurance, closing at 5.59 naira after gaining 8.97%. Could even hit the 10%, that's the max. Well, it shows you that it's just a bearish week. We have Academy as the top gainer. Japo Gold also gaining 3.7% at the close of trade. So yes, It's been a bearish week. We accept that. But we do hope that investors will take advantage of this, buy the dip, and give us the bull by next week. That's the stock market report. It's back to you.
Now let's find out how some of the world's major stock markets ended Friday's trading session. That's business news tonight. It's back to Millicent.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Time for some international news. Here's Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Ukraine says hundreds of graves have been found outside Izum, days after the town was retaken from Russia. Wooden crosses, most of them marked with numbers, were discovered in a forest outside the town by advancing Ukrainian forces. Authorities said they would start exhuming some of the graves on Friday. It is not yet clear what happened to the victims, but early accounts suggest some may have died from shelling and a lack of access to healthcare. Speaking on Friday, the head of Ukraine's National Police Service said most of the bodies belonged to civilians. Meanwhile, Speaker of the US House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, said Russia must be held accountable.
Accountable for the atrocities they are committing against little children, using rape as a weapon of war, hunger as a tool of war, and the rest. But they must be held accountable. And I was encouraging to hear how Ukraine is documenting the crimes against humanity that are taking place there now.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has admitted that Chinese President Xi Jinping had questions and concerns about the situation in Ukraine. The two leaders held their first face-to-face meetings since the war at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit held in the Uzbek city of Samarkand. Xi said he was very happy to meet my old friend again after Putin said US attempts to create a unipolar world would fail. The Chinese president did not mention Ukraine in his public remarks. Vladimir Putin praised China's leader for what he said was a balanced position on the conflict. Authorities say at least 10 people have died after flash floods hit the Italian region of Marche overnight. Torrential rain falling late on Thursday caused rivers and streams to overflow and inundate coastal towns around the regional capital of Ancona. Around 16 inches of rain, half a year's worth, were recorded in just a few hours. Rescuers are still searching for 4 others, including a child who was separated when a river burst its banks. In areas where the waters have subsided, the scale of the damage can be seen up close. Thick mud covering everything, cars overturned, and people's destroyed possessions piled up in the streets. King Charles III and Camilla, the Queen Consort, have visited Wales on the final stop of their tour of the UK's 4 nations. Landing by helicopter, they were greeted by a gun salute at Cardiff Castle. They then arrived at Wales's National Service of Prayer and Reflection for Queen Elizabeth at Llandaff Cathedral, before meeting crowds of well-wishers. They then visited the Welsh Parliament. With his opening remarks in Welsh, King Charles went on to express his gratitude for the condolences offered today.
I am deeply grateful for the addresses of condolence, which so movingly paid tribute to our late sovereign, my beloved mother, the Queen. I take up my new duties with immense gratitude for the privilege of having been able to serve as Prince of Wales.
Meanwhile, in London, the queue to see the Queen lying in state was paused after Southwark Park, the end of the queue, reached capacity. This was the message on what is usually the live queue tracker, saying the queue is at capacity and entry is currently paused. Please do not attempt to join until it resumes. Officials warned of waiting times of at least 14 hours. And wildlife experts have been seen making preparations to relocate cheetahs from Namibia to India as part of efforts to reintroduce the world's fastest land animal into the South Asian nation. Cheetahs had gone extinct in India in 1952, reportedly due to poaching and habitat loss, but are now scheduled to be reintroduced into India on Saturday after some arrived in the central Madhya Pradesh state. 8 cheetahs, consisting of 5 females and 3 males, were translocated from Namibia to Kuno National Park. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit the national park on his 72nd birthday and launch the Cheetah Reintroduction Project. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Time now for some sports news. FC Robo Queens are champions of this year's Betsia Basaki Women Football Tournament. In a keenly contested encounter played at the Samuel Ogbemodia Stadium in Benin City, Robo Queens stunned the host 1-0 courtesy of a goal scored by Oladiti Rukayat in the 24th minute. The Lagos-based team will go home with a giant trophy and cash prize of 5 million naira. 12 teams participated in the 10-day event, which was in its 2nd edition. FIFA has confirmed that Ecuador will play at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar after dismissing Chile's appeal in the case of Ecuadorian player Byron Castillo, who Chile claimed was ineligible to play during the qualifiers. Well, FIFA said its appeal judges deemed that on the basis of the documents presented, the player was to be considered as holding permanent Ecuadorian nationality in accordance with football legal statutes. Bitter boxing rivals Sal Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin are seeking to end their unfinished business and conclude one of the sport's most iconic rivalries in recent memory. The only 2 bouts Gennady Golovkin has not won have been against Alvarez, yet the Kazakh boxer says he is not using that as motivation ahead of their long-awaited trilogy fight on Saturday night. And that's sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun.
And the main news again. Hundreds of Boko Haram members were today reported to have fled northeast Nigeria to Niger Republic's side of the Lake Chad since last month due to sustained bombing campaign on their hideout by the military. That's your news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.